What happens when a beloved actress sits down for what should be a friendly chat about her charity work, only to face an ambush of personal attacks and condescending remarks from a host who seems determined to tear her down on live television? In just 36 seconds, one comment would be so shocking, so deliberately cruel, that it would turn a casual morning show into an explosive confrontation that no one saw coming. Rachel Shenton walked onto the Loose Women's set with a warm smile, ready to discuss her work with deaf children and the upcoming charity gala she'd been organizing for months. The audience clapped as she took her seat on the famous purple couch, settling in between panelists Nadia Sawala and Jane Moore, while Denise Welch sat across from her in the host's chair, flanked by Kay Adams. "So Rachel," Denise began, leaning back in her chair with an expression that already seemed dismissive. "You're here to talk about your charity work. Another celebrity charity project. How original." The audience went quiet. Rachel's smile faltered slightly, but she pressed on. "Well, yes, I'm really passionate about supporting deaf children and their families. Having learned sign language for my role in The Silent Child, I realized just how much—" Sorry, Denise interrupted, holding up her hand. "I'm going to stop you right there. Don't you think it's a bit convenient? You win an Oscar for playing a character who uses sign language, and suddenly you're the ambassador for deaf awareness? Seems like good PR to me." Nadia shifted uncomfortably in her seat, glancing at Jane with wide eyes. Rachel took a breath, clearly trying to remain composed. "Actually, Denise, my father is deaf. I've been involved in this community my entire life. The role came to me because of my existing knowledge and commitment, not the other way around." Denise waved her hand dismissively. Right. But let's be honest here. How much of the money from your little gala actually goes to the cause? 20%? 30%? Because we all know these celebrity charity events are really just fancy parties, where you lot get to feel good about yourselves while writing off your designer dresses as tax deductions. The studio audience gasped audibly. Jane Moore leaned forward, attempting to intervene. "Denise, I don't think that's entirely fair," Jane said carefully. "Rachel has been very transparent about—" "Oh, come on, Jane," Denise cut her off. "We're supposed to be the show that says what everyone else is thinking. I'm just asking the questions the public wants answered. Or are we supposed to just fawn over every celebrity who comes on here with their carefully rehearsed talking points?" Rachel's hands had started to tremble slightly, but her voice remained steady. 97% of the proceeds go directly to the charity. My team and I work entirely voluntarily. The venue was donated. The performers are giving their time for free. I'd be happy to show you the full breakdown of costs." "Oh, would you?" Denise's tone dripped with sarcasm. "How generous of you. Tell me, Rachel, is this really about helping people? Or is this about rehabilitating your image? Because, let's not forget, your career wasn't exactly on fire before The Silent Child, was it? You were doing what? Small TV roles? Background work?" Kay Adams finally spoke up, her voice tight with discomfort. "Denise, Rachel has had a very successful career. She was in Hollyoaks for years and—" "Oh, please, Kay," Denise interrupted again. "Hollyoaks. Let's not pretend that's the pinnacle of British acting. I'm just saying what we're all thinking. Rachel needed this Oscar. She needed this cause. And now she's riding that wave for all it's worth." Rachel sat perfectly still, her jaw clenched. The camera zoomed in on her face, capturing the moment her professional composure began to crack. "Denise, with respect, you don't know anything about my motivations or my career," Rachel said, her voice quieter now, but somehow more powerful. "You don't know about the years I spent volunteering at deaf schools before I ever got that role. And you don't know about my father's struggles, or how I watched him be excluded and dismissed by people who thought they knew better." "Oh, here we go," Denise rolled her eyes dramatically. The emotional backstory. Very moving, Rachel. Very rehearsed. Did your publicist help you work on that? Nadia suddenly interjected, her voice sharp. Okay, hold on. Denise, this is getting out of hand. Rachel is our guest. She came here in good faith to talk about important work, and you're treating her like she's on trial. I'm doing my job, Nadia, Denise snapped back. My job is to ask tough questions, not to sit here and let celebrities use our platform for free advertising. If Rachel can't handle a few direct questions, maybe she shouldn't be doing interviews. Direct questions? Rachel's voice had an edge now. You've not asked me a single question about the actual charity, about the children we're helping, about the programs we're funding. You've just made assumptions and accusations. Because that's what journalism is, Denise shot back. It's about scrutiny. It's about not just accepting everything at face value. Maybe you're used to interviewers throwing you softball questions and telling you how wonderful you are, but that's not how we do things here. Jane tried again to steer the conversation. Why don't we talk about the actual programs the charity runs? Rachel, I know you've established several new initiatives for deaf teenagers transitioning into the workplace. Boring, Denise said flatly. I'm sorry, but that's boring television. What I want to know is why celebrities like Rachel feel the need to attach themselves to causes. Is it guilt? Is it ego? What is it that makes you think you're qualified to run a charity when you have no background in nonprofit management, no degree in education or social work? Rachel's face had gone pale, then flushed with color. I don't run it alone. We have a board of directors, experts in their fields, people who have dedicated their lives to this work. I'm a figurehead, yes, because my profile helps raise awareness and funds. But I'm also someone who has lived experience with this community. I'm someone who cares deeply and has put in the work to understand the issues. Lived experience, Denise repeated mockingly. So having a deaf relative makes you an expert. My uncle has diabetes. Should I start a diabetes charity? My cousin is an alcoholic. Should I open a rehab center? Kay Adams looked genuinely shocked. Denise, those comparisons are completely inappropriate, and why? Denise turned on Kay. Why is it inappropriate? I'm pointing out the absurdity of celebrity activism. These people think that because they've been in a few films or won an award, they're suddenly qualified to solve the world's problems. It's narcissistic. Rachel stood up abruptly, her microphone nearly falling from her dress. The sudden movement made everyone freeze. You know what, Denise? Rachel's voice was shaking now, but not with nerves, with anger. I came here to talk about 10-year-old Emma, who can finally communicate with her hearing parents for the first time because of our program. I came here to talk about 16-year-old Daniel, who got his first job because an employer attended our awareness workshop. I came here to talk about families who feel less alone because of the support groups we've funded. But you don't care about any of that, do you? Oh, I care, Denise said, leaning forward with a smirk. I care about the truth. I care about accountability. If you're going to ask the public for money, you should be prepared to answer tough questions. I am prepared, Rachel's voice rose. I've answered every question you've actually asked, but you're not interested in answers. You're interested in making yourself look clever by tearing someone else down. You're interested in creating drama because you think that's what good television is. The audience began to murmur, some people nodding in agreement with Rachel. Denise's expression hardened. How dare you? Denise said coldly. How dare you come on this show and tell me how to do my job? I've been in this industry for 30 years. I've interviewed prime ministers, celebrities, criminals. I don't need a soap actress turned Oscar winner to lecture me about journalism. Then maybe you should start acting like a journalist instead of a bully, Rachel said, her voice clear and firm now. The studio went completely silent. Even the crew members operating the cameras seemed to freeze. Jane Moore's mouth fell open. Nadia covered her face with her hands. Kay Adams stared straight ahead, apparently unsure where to look. Denise's face turned bright red. She sat up straighter, her hands gripping the arms of her chair. A bully? Denise's voice was dangerously quiet. You're calling me a bully? On my own show? It's not your show, Rachel corrected. It's a panel show. You're one of 4 hosts, and right now, you're using your position to attack someone who can't defend themselves on equal footing. That's exactly what a bully does. Rachel, maybe we should just take a breath. Nadia tried to interject gently, reaching out toward Rachel. But Rachel pulled away, her eyes still locked on Denise. No, Nadia, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I'm done. I've sat here for 15 minutes being insulted, having my work dismissed, having my motivations questioned. I've been professional. I've been patient. But I won't be disrespected like this. Disrespected? Denise laughed harshly. You think you're being disrespected because someone finally asked you real questions instead of kissing your feet? This is the real world, Rachel. Not everyone is going to worship you because you won an award. I don't want anyone to worship me. Rachel's voice cracked slightly. I just wanted to come here and share information about something I care about. I wanted to help raise awareness. I wanted to invite people to support a cause that changes lives. But you've made that impossible. Nothing's impossible, Denise said coolly. You're just upset because you're not getting the easy ride you expected. Well, welcome to Loose Women. We don't do easy rides here. Jane Moore finally found her voice again, speaking more firmly this time. Denise, this has gone too far. Rachel is our guest. We invited her here, and regardless of how any of us feel about celebrity charity work, the way you're speaking to her is unacceptable. Unacceptable? Denise turned on Jane now. You think I'm being unacceptable? I'm being honest. I'm being real. Isn't that what this show is supposed to be about? Or should we just turn into another mindless chat show where everyone pretends everything is perfect and wonderful? There's a difference between being honest and being cruel, Rachel said quietly, and you've crossed that line repeatedly. Denise stood up now too, facing Rachel across the coffee table. I'm not cruel. I'm direct. If you can't handle direct, then maybe you should stick to acting, where everyone tells you exactly what you want to hear, and you can hide behind a character. At least when I'm acting, I'm creating something, Rachel said. What are you creating here? What's the purpose of this? To make me look bad? To make yourself look tough? Oui, passé. Because all you're doing is showing everyone watching that you're willing to attack someone who's trying to do good in the world. The audience started to clap, slowly at first, then building. Denise's head whipped around to look at them, her expression furious. Oh, brilliant, Denise said bitterly. The audience is against me now. Of course they are. They see a pretty young actress being questioned by an older woman, and they automatically side with her. This is exactly the problem with society today. No one wants truth. They just want to feel comfortable. Kay Adams stood up, positioning herself between Denise and Rachel. I think we need to go to a commercial break. Right now. No, Denise said firmly. We're live. We're staying live. Rachel wants to make a scene. Fine. Let's let her make her scene. Tell everyone how terrible I am. Tell them how I'm the villain for daring to question you. Rachel shook her head slowly, starting to unclip her microphone. I'm not going to do that, Denise. I'm just going to leave. Because there's no point in continuing this conversation. You've already decided who I am and what my motivations are. Nothing I say will change your mind. Running away, Denise taunted. Very mature, very professional. No, Rachel said calmly, finally getting her microphone off and placing it carefully on the couch. Not running away, choosing not to engage with someone who has no interest in a genuine conversation. There's a difference. Nadia stood up too, touching Rachel's arm gently. Rachel, I'm so sorry. This isn't how this was supposed to go. Your work is incredible, and what you're doing matters. Rachel gave Nadia a small, sad smile. Thank you. That means a lot. Oh, how touching, Denise said sarcastically. Nadia swooping in to save the day, to comfort poor little Rachel who couldn't handle a tough interview. Rachel turned back to Denise one last time. You keep calling this a tough interview, but it's not. A tough interview asks challenging questions about the work itself, about outcomes, about strategies, about challenges. You haven't asked me any of those things. You've just made personal attacks. And I think deep down, you know that. I know that you're too sensitive to be in the public eye, Denise retorted. I know that if you can't handle one difficult interview, you're going to struggle when real scrutiny comes your way. I can handle scrutiny, Rachel said tiredly. I can handle criticism. What I won't handle is disrespect. And that's all you've given me today. She turned to walk off the set. Denise's voice followed her. Walk away then. Prove my point. Show everyone that you're all talk and no substance. That when things get uncomfortable, you run. Rachel paused at the edge of the set, her back still to the cameras. For a moment, it seemed like she might turn around. The studio held its breath. But then, she kept walking. She stepped past the cameras, past the crew members who stood awkwardly with their equipment, past the producers who were frantically speaking into their headsets. Back on the set, Denise stood alone, her chest heaving with anger. Jane and Nadia had moved away from her, neither looking at her. Kay was speaking urgently to someone off camera. Well, Denise said to the cameras, trying to regain control, I suppose that's that. Our guest has decided she'd rather leave than have an honest conversation. I think that tells you everything you need to know. No, Denise, Jane said, her voice shaking with emotion. What it tells us is that you crossed a line. Multiple lines. Rachel Shenton is a good person doing good work, and you treated her appallingly. I treated her like any other guest, Denise insisted. No, you didn't, Nadia said firmly. I've been on this panel for years. I've seen you interview hundreds of people. That wasn't an interview. That was an attack. Denise looked around at her fellow panelists, seeming to realize for the first time that she had lost them all. You're all being ridiculous. You're all being too sensitive. Maybe, Kay said quietly. Or maybe you've been too harsh. In the wings, Rachel stood with a production assistant who was offering her water and tissues. Her hands were still shaking, but her eyes were dry. She wasn't crying. She was just processing what had happened. A producer approached her cautiously. Rachel, I'm so sorry. We had no idea Denise was going to go in that direction. We can cut it. We can edit it. We can... No, Rachel said softly. Don't cut it. Let people see what happened. Let them make up their own minds. The producer looked uncertain. Are you sure? This could be damaging for you. Rachel let out a small, bitter laugh. Damaging for me? I just got ambushed on live television for trying to help deaf children. If that's damaging to my reputation, then I don't want to know what kind of world we're living in. Back on set, the remaining panelists were trying to continue the show, but the energy had completely shifted. Denise sat silently now, her earlier aggression seeming to have burned itself out. She looked uncomfortable, defensive, like she was only now beginning to understand the magnitude of what had happened. We should probably address what just occurred, Kay said carefully to the camera. Rachel Shenton left the show following what became a very heated exchange about her charity work. I think it's important to acknowledge that emotions ran high on all sides. Emotions ran high because Denise made them run high, Nadia said bluntly. Let's not pretend this was a mutual escalation. Rachel came here with good intentions and was treated poorly from the start. Jane nodded in agreement. I have to say, I'm really disappointed in how that went. Rachel's work with deaf children is genuinely remarkable. The charity has already helped hundreds of families. And instead of talking about that, we spent the whole time questioning her character. Denise finally spoke, her voice tight. I was doing my job. I was asking the questions that needed to be asked. What questions? Nadia challenged. You didn't ask about the charity's programs. You didn't ask about their success rates, or their funding model, or their future plans. You just made accusations and assumptions. I was trying to keep it real, Denise said defensively. No, Jane said firmly. You were trying to create drama, and you succeeded, but at what cost? The cameras continued to roll as the panelists sat in uncomfortable silence. The audience watched, transfixed by this unscripted moment of television. No one quite knew what to say or do. Somewhere in the studio, Rachel Shenton gathered her things, preparing to leave the building. She checked her phone and saw dozens of messages already coming through. Supportive messages from friends, colleagues, people who had watched the interview live. Messages telling her she did the right thing. Messages telling her she was brave. She didn't feel brave. She felt exhausted and sad and angry. She felt like she had failed somehow, even though, rationally, she knew she hadn't. She had stood up for herself. She had refused to be bullied. She had walked away from a toxic situation. Those were all good things, but they didn't feel good in the moment. A security guard appeared to escort her out of the building. As they walked through the corridors, staff members gave her sympathetic looks and quiet words of support. Someone said she was right to leave. Someone else said Denise was out of line. Someone offered to get her a car. Rachel thanked them all politely, still in a daze. The reality of what had happened was starting to sink in. She had just walked off one of the biggest daytime television shows in the country. The clip would be everywhere within hours. People would be talking about it, analyzing it, taking sides. She hoped they would understand. She hoped they would see that she hadn't done it for attention or drama. She had done it because staying would have meant accepting treatment that no one should have to accept. She had done it because sometimes walking away is the strongest thing you can do. Back on the set, the show limped toward its conclusion. The planned segments for the rest of the hour were abandoned. Instead, the panelists took calls from viewers, many of whom wanted to discuss what they had just witnessed. Caller after caller expressed support for Rachel and criticism of Denise. One woman said she had been planning to attend the charity gala and now felt even more motivated to do so. Another said she had met Rachel at a deaf awareness event and could vouch for her genuine commitment to the cause. A third said she was disappointed in Loose Women for allowing a guest to be treated that way. Through it all, Denise sat increasingly silent, her face growing tighter and more drawn. Kay tried to give her opportunities to respond, to explain herself, but Denise seemed to have realized that anything she said now would only make things worse. I think we can all agree this was an unusual show, Kay said as they approached the end. It certainly gave us a lot to think about regarding how we conduct interviews and treat our guests. We'll be back tomorrow with a whole new panel and hopefully a calmer atmosphere. As the credits rolled and the cameras turned off, Denise stood quickly and left the set without speaking to anyone. Jane and Nadia exchanged glances, but didn't try to stop her. The crew began breaking down the equipment, talking among themselves about what they had just witnessed. In the green room, the other guests scheduled for later segments had been watching on the monitors. They looked uncertain, concerned. One of them asked a producer if the show was still going ahead as planned, or if everything was being canceled. Outside the studio, Rachel finally reached her car. She sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, not starting the engine, just breathing. Her phone continued to buzz with messages, but she ignored it. She needed a minute to collect herself, to process everything that had happened. She thought about the deaf children who were supposed to benefit from today's appearance. She thought about the awareness she had hoped to raise, the donations she had hoped to inspire. Had she ruined all of that by walking away? Or had Denise ruined it by making the interview impossible? She didn't have the answers yet. Maybe no one did. Maybe it would take time for people to sort through what they had seen and decide what they thought about it. All Rachel knew was that she had done what felt right in the moment. She had stood up for herself. She had refused to be diminished. And whatever came next, she could face it knowing that she had maintained her dignity and her integrity. She started the car and began the drive home, leaving the studio and its chaos behind. But she knew the conversation was just beginning. She knew that by tomorrow, everyone would have an opinion about what had happened. The video would be dissected, analyzed, turned into memes and think pieces and hot takes. But in this moment, driving through the streets with the radio off and the windows down, Rachel Shenton allowed herself to feel proud. Proud that she had advocated for herself. Proud that she had named bad behavior when she saw it. Proud that she had chosen her own well-being over playing along with something that felt wrong. The 36 seconds that changed everything had come early in the interview, when Denise had made that first dismissive comment about celebrity charity projects. That was the moment when the tone was set. That was the moment when Rachel realized this wasn't going to be the conversation she had prepared for. Everything that followed stemmed from those crucial seconds, from that initial choice by Denise to approach the interview with skepticism and hostility rather than curiosity and respect. Rachel thought about all the young people watching who might have seen themselves in her situation. People who had been dismissed or belittled or questioned unfairly. She hoped they saw that it was okay to walk away. That staying in a situation that demeans you isn't brave, it's just painful. That you don't owe anyone your presence, especially when they're using it to hurt you. The city streets blurred past as Rachel drove, her mind still replaying moments from the interview. Denise's smirk, the audience's gasp, Nadia's supportive touch, Jane's firm voice speaking up, the weight of the microphone in her hand as she removed it, the feeling of walking away, of choosing herself. It hadn't been easy. It had gone against every instinct to be polite, to smooth things over, to make everyone comfortable. But sometimes easy isn't right. Sometimes the hard thing is the thing that needs to be done. And Rachel had done it, live on television, in front of hundreds of thousands of viewers.